The role reminded me so much of my grandmother and my aunt, so I delivered it the way they would have. And it just went over very big. That's my belief. Yes, I do believe that. Well, it's so much like theater, so I did it like theater. So I understood what my blocking was going to be before it was even assigned. The director was saying, Marla, I want you, yeah, that's good. But my very first time on the show, we had a line called, How Come We Overcame and Nobody Told Me? So the role reminded me so much of my grandmother and my aunt, so I delivered it the way they would have. And it just went over very big. So they wrote something else for me around the 5th show. I came back and did that. Then they wrote something else around the 8th show. I came back and did that. And we only did 13 for the first time out, half a season. So when the next season came, they offered me a contract, a 7 out of 13, because I was the nemesis for George, and Isabel was a nemesis for Zara Khalid, Mrs. Jefferson. So since we were kind of alike, they didn't think they'd use me more than 7 out of 13, but it moved on up, like moving on up. We moved on up till I was finally doing all the shows. She represented the masses, the have-nots. So they're the haves and the have-nots. The have-nots are the employees, so to speak. So I represented a mass amount of people in the country. I told George off, and so when I got George, they got their boss, or they got their dad, or they got whoever was over them. So I was really speaking for them. That's the way they felt. As I was doing the role, I began to discover that people were looking for people in their families who had been maids so they could relate. They could come up and say, my aunt was a maid, or my grandmother was a maid. And of course, my grandmother, I'm sure, had worked in service. She wasn't when I was growing up with her. But I'm sure that it went on a lot in the community. Well, the maids that I knew were like that. There was a housekeeper from my mother named Harriet, and she'd tell you in a minute, get out of the kitchen, stay out of the kitchen. The floor is, she's not ready for you to come in there. They took over like it was their house. That's what most of them did. Yes, it is. Because you're the only one who knows who the character is. You have to assimilate with her in order to do her well, and you have to believe in her. So I had to tell them who Florence was, because they had wanted me to do a joke, and they wanted the man to stay in my bedroom. And I said, I couldn't possibly have him in my bedroom. They have been nice enough to take me in. They have a son, and all I can think of to do is disrespect them by bringing a man in the house. I said, no, she'd never do that. I said, now, she'd let him stay over, but she'd let him stay in her bedroom, and she would stay on the sofa so she could explain to them in case they came out. She wouldn't leave him out there on the sofa because he might scare them to death if they got up and came out and saw a strange man on the sofa. So the argument was George thought I let the man sleep in my bedroom. And so he said something about my morals. And I told him I quit. I said, for your information, TJ slept in the bedroom and I slept out here on the sofa. So I quit, and then Mr. Willis, whom I dearly love, Franklin, got him to get me back by telling him my folks were down. I would have to go back down to Mississippi, and I have sharecrop and all that. So he got Mr. Jefferson to let me come back. But he said I could only come back if I acted like a proper maid. So I came back as Aunt Jemima. Well, yes, and I think people felt that way too, because George represented the American dream. Without benefit of education, you could pull yourself up by your bootstraps and become rich. So that's what he did. He opened a cleaners, 7 cleaners, one near you. That was always his line. And he never went to college. So what you're saying to the American child now is that you can be anything you want to be in America. You have an opportunity to do this. So we represented that, and Isabel represented all the women who have money, who donate their time and do philanthropic adventures. So they had the help center, her and Helen Willis. So that's how she spent her time rather than being idle. And I represented the masses who had to work for a living. And then they had a son, Lionel, and the Willises had a daughter, Jenny, and the two of them represented all the young people who were in high school, then went on to college, then got married, and the first child, so in the first job, and all the things they faced. And of course, Zara was there for the senior citizens. So we kind of represented a cross-section of America. I still have that. They still come up to me.
What would be an example?
Because we've never stopped running. They're now saying, I wish they had more shows like you. My whole family used to sit down and watch. As a matter of fact, we did Jeffersons live, and people came from all over, and they brought their children so they could see the show that they grew up on. And I still run into people, I grew up on your show, I grew up on your show. Even on Canes, I grew up on your show. I said, did you? Thank you. People loved it. They identified with it, and we solved problems. We were always, everything that happened on the Jeffersons had happened in real life, like the first transplant. We went through that, George giving a kidney to his cousin. So whatever was going on the show was going on in somewhere in somebody's life. Norman was so on it. Norman Lear is just such a genius, you know. He wanted them to be a real couple. And the truth of the matter is Roxy was in an interracial marriage with Cy Kravitz, Lenny Kravitz's mother and father. And Ralph was in an interracial, not Ralph, Franklin was in an interracial marriage. His wife is Spanish. So they really, and they treated each other like anybody else would. So it was a normal, people could believe it was a normal relationship. I think they looked at television and they liked the characters. They liked the people, they felt they were real, and it changed their perspective. I mean, they looked at people differently. They accepted them because they accepted that character. I think I felt a responsibility to be true to the character, whoever I thought the character was. And it had to be who I thought she was because I was playing her. Just as any other actor, most of the actors that we love, we believe they're real, we believe their roles. Well, it was a play that's set in the 50s, and it dealt also with some of the restrictions of the race. So I didn't feel we could bring that to television because people thought you couldn't live in this area, you couldn't live in that area. And so when we brought it to television, I saw it a different way. I think Norman saw it as a Broadway play. I saw it as a movie of the week. And NBC, Brandon Tartikoff saw it as a series. So we ended up going with Brandon because he came to see the play. Norman came to see the play. Everybody came to see the play. Well, we've advanced somewhat, you know, in society, and you can live in different places. You can live with and have Caucasian neighbors, Asian neighbors, or whatever they are. And you couldn't do that in the 50s. You had the blacks who lived on the south side and the north side. You had the Caucasians, and it just wasn't as liberal. So that wasn't true anymore. So, and you brought a big truth to television. Unless you're doing a period piece. Well, people kept saying, why don't they ever let you have a man? When are they going to let you have a man? So when I wanted to do 2 to 7, I said, okay, I have to have a man. There's 3 things. I will not own the building. They wanted me to own the building. I said, well, not own the building because I'm part of the masses, the have-nots. And I don't know what owning the building will do to that. I said, because owning the building makes me a have. So I will not own the building. I have to have a man, you know, and I wanted it to be set in where we could sit on the porch all year round. So I couldn't get that. But I did get, I don't own the building, and I had a husband. And I wanted my children to go to public school so we could bring all the problems that come up in public school. And so we could deal with real issues on the show through comedy. And I think you can always do that. That was the show I did. And I knew Ted Hayes, the homeless advocate. And I had been downtown and seen everybody. So I asked him to bring some real homeless people. Of course, the first thing they did was clean them up and gave them a wardrobe. I said, no. But they had so much fun, and they were so real and so happy to be doing the show that I said, well, you know, every time there's a show where there's a mass amount of people, why can't we hire some homeless as well as others, because they're just extras, you know, and they don't have lines. And they were saying in the limo, because we had a scene where about 15 or 20 of us went in one side of the limo, came out the other, so it looked like we were all in the limo. And they said, I could really do this. I said, yeah, you could. But I got so much backlash from that. People saying, we have hard enough time getting jobs, but that wouldn't affect them. Drugs kill. And I did not want to end up saying, with a nice little ending, he was a nice boy, and that we all thought was not on drugs, but he was driving an expensive car, and he gave Calvin something to hold for him, a bag. It turned out to be drugs. So I went over to tell his mother, and she didn't want to listen to me. As a matter of fact, she put me out. And so we're having not the PTA, but we're having the block club meeting where all the neighbors get together and to talk about what we're going to do about crime in the area. And she burst in saying that her son had been killed. And she says, I got a 12-year-old at home. Somebody tell me what to do. And I wanted to end on tell me what to do because we don't have an answer. It has an obligation, I think, to teach as well as to entertain. And you can get laughs while making a point. I see they're doing more things. They're doing more things where gays are concerned and making them regular people. And so anytime you place a stigma on someone, you're really doing it to yourself because we're all one. I truly believe that we're all one, and whatever you point at me, there's 4 fingers pointing back at you. Yeah, he's a very unselfish actor. See, I couldn't hit him if he didn't set me up. And he was so good at setting me up. And then sometimes he would hit me, he would come out of the blue with something. I had a line where he said he was an executive. I said, yeah, here, we'll take out the garbage. And on the spot, he said, okay, hop in. He come up with hysterical stuff like that all the time. Well, when we started, JACKÉE was a little overweight, and she had this short little hair and the curls, and she had this Mae West character, and she'd wear this tight dress. And so when she'd do jokes, it was hysterically funny because you're looking at but of course, as time passed, she got more voluptuous. Her hair got longer. She got more and more beautiful, but she was still that breakout character. She'd do something so outrageous that I'd have to say, wait, and fall out laughing, and she would fall out laughing at herself. So I'd have to say that she was mostly responsible for that show going as long as it did. Well, I think more than making a show, we're making a true point. For example, we had a show where Lester tells me not to sell this lamp because his aunt gave it to him. So they said, well, we'll make it really ugly. I said, doesn't matter, it's his lamp, and he told me not to sell it. So they wanted me to sell it during the swap meet we had outside. So I ended up selling it. I said, okay, I sold it. Now we have to have a conversation about it. They said, no, you can go all, I said, no, we'll make it very quick. I'll write what I want to say, he'll write what he wants to say, and we'll make it very brief. So all we said was, I'm sorry I sold it. And he said, we have been married all these years for you to start disrespecting me now. So it was a point that was made, and people remember those things. Well, I did the Hugleys. I played his mother, and we did that for 4 seasons, so that was nice. She was Hattie Mae, and the funny thing is, I owned a jazz supper club, and I would have comedians open. As a matter of fact, Renaldo Ray was my regular opener, but I'd let other comedians come in, but they had to be clean. And DL came in, I didn't know who he was, and he got on the stage and he started his routine. And the moment he started getting vulgar, people started looking for me because they knew I didn't put up with it. They'd say, oh. And so I applauded and went on the stage and took him off the stage. Wasn't that wonderful? And I said, now you come back when you have some clean material. He said, I couldn't come back because I didn't have any clean material. I said, well, at least you weren't mad. So I reminded him of his mother. So when he got a show, he said he wanted me to be his mother. So when I went in for the audition, he was in the room. And he said, I worked at your club once. I said, really? I said, and you can work there again if you're clean. And so they all fell out laughing because they knew the story, but I didn't. My manager told me, he said, you don't remember that? I said, no, I don't. Oh yeah, I wanted it to be the best show if possible. And what I would notice is we would have an afternoon show and an evening show. So we'd have two different audiences. So what you do is sometimes after we go to eat after the first show, the energy is not the way it was in the first show. But in the first show, maybe more mistakes were made, so we had to do more pickups. But if you have a show there, for example, it's a show where Helen had these pom-poms, and that was Pearl. And she came out and it was hysterical. The people just laughed and stomped. Well, now after we ate and we came back and she did that, she didn't have quite the same energy and we did not get the same response. But they picked that because you're tired. You've gone through all these shows, now you're sitting in editing, and you primarily might pick all the best you see in the second show, but you don't have the best in the second show. So I would sit there because I would watch everybody's performance. I'd say, she had a better shot, so we'd look for it. They say, yeah. So we would have jokes, and first they didn't like it, but then they started loving it. They have a joke, they said, Marla, you picked this joke, and we like this joke better. I said, do you? I said, well, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna take some scissors, we're gonna cut that joke out and give it to you, and you can take it home and keep it forever. And first they say, then after a while, they say, if they disagree with each other, they say, you know what we're gonna do for him, Marla? We're gonna take the scissors, cut that out, give it to him, and he can take it home and keep it forever. So we started playing a lot, and it got to be fun. I really like those producers. I don't know, I think it was my faith and the hard work I was willing to do. I was playing in community theaters, undressing in basements and changing clothes. And my daughter got on TV before I did. She did Sanford and Son, and she also did the first film. She did Cleopatra Jones. So I went to visit her on the set, and she had a trailer. And I was doing Sweet Jesus Preacher Man in the basement somewhere. So I said, oh my goodness. She said, oh yeah, she had everything. But then she decided acting wasn't relevant. She was going off and finish college. So I was trying to get the role on Cleopatra Jones, my girlfriend and I, but he was waiting for her. And she was trying to decide whether acting was relevant. So I teased her because now she's a director and a writer, and she's acting again. So she started booking shows. I said, do it all.
So it is relevant.
It is relevant. Everything is relevant. I love Norman, and Norman is such an innovator, and he's so down to earth. I would say to Norman sometimes when we were doing the show, and there was a problem they were trying to solve, I said, I bet if Norman was here, he could do it. So he stopped coming to our show because we were successful. So I saw him in the hall, and I said, you never come to our show anymore. He said, but you guys don't need me. You're successful. He said, you want me to come to the show? I said, yes. So he told his to cancel what he was going to do, and he came to the show, and they said, Norman's coming. Who invited him? They said, Marla invited him. So they were mad at me, but he came in and he solved the problem right away.
Oh, do you remember what it was?
I'm trying to remember. It was something down to earth to do with Mr. and Mrs. Willis. He came right in and he solved the problem because he looked at it, what's real. Oh, well, I think it's a personal thing. My belief and my faith, I think, my belief was when I first started, they said, well, what makes you think you can do it? You know, you're not beautiful, you're not young. Young girls are having a hard time. I said, somebody got to be the aunt, somebody got to be the mother. Why not me? So people would come into my restaurant when I had it. There was a woman that came in named Frankie, and she said, "I've always wanted to act." She said, "But I guess it's too late now." She said, "You think it's too late for me?" I said, "Are you still breathing?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Then it's never too late. As long as you're breathing, you have another shot." And the next thing I knew, I put her on 227 for one thing. She was one of my choir members. So she came and she did that. And then I was laying in the bed one day and I looked at TV and I saw this movie of the week, and there she was starring in this movie of the week. So it's never too late. That's my theory. I kind of listen to people all the time. I always wanted to be an observer and a listener, and I used to do that all the time before I got into this business. I would be in a club and I would sit back and just watch people. And I'd pick up their language. I could tell what they were going to do before they did it. You know, if there was a man who I felt was a little dangerous, other people are not paying attention, but I'm always watching. And I was in a club one night with my girlfriend, and I saw this guy. He pulled out a gun, and nobody was paying attention. So I said, "Laura, let's get to the door. The man has a gun." "Gun!" She jumps up. I could kill her. And she would jump up and run. I said, "Don't tell her anything. Just take her by the arm and take her." But I'm always watching people. And I think I picked up a lot from watching people, what they do and what they don't do. And I listen to what they say and what they don't say. Whether I agree with them or not, I hear their perspective. I think it makes you a better actress. So if I'm called upon to do that kind of part, as I was on Passions, I was Aunt Irma, and Aunt Irma was a terror. And I said, "Don't I love her at all?" So it was totally against what I would do. But there were a lot of people that were following Aunt Irma. I said, "You guys are sadistic." I never had the credit, so nobody knew that I was. It was rights, courtesies, and privileges of, but I was never had the credit, didn't make the money. But I wanted to have some control of what the show was about, so that's why I went to editing. And I was a fast study, so they could never say, "They need you in the rehearsal hall." I said, "No, I have a stand-in." And she's watching me, and she does what I do, so the show goes on. They're not going to miss me. And when I come in, I already knew my lines, because then I don't think I can do it now. At least I don't have a reason to do it now. You do what you have to do. But I would learn everybody else's lines as well as mine to get the whole flow of how everything was going. So when I came, I already knew. And they were surprised at that. Well, that's the way we're trained. When you grow up when you start acting in the community and you're doing community theater, they're really rough on you. We went to PASLA, and we would get up on the stage to do something, and you know, the whole class would be looking at you, and you say, "What I was trying to do," "Well, we didn't see that." They tell you just like it was. And if you broke character or something, they say, "Get off the stage. You'd have to leave the stage." So we had to take everything very seriously. So if you want to act, learn the craft and respect the craft. You don't just jump on TV. You know, you get in a class and learn what it is that you say you want to do. People always say, "I want to be on TV, I want to be," well, go get in an acting workshop. I always say that, you know, people want to go meet somebody. Well, they don't have time to just open the door and look at all of you. They would never be able to do their business. So I said, they don't have time for that. If you get in a workshop and you get in a play, you can invite them to come see you. You can invite an agent to come see you. I said, but other than that, how do they know what you can do? They're not going to give you a shot and let you get in there and mess up. You have to know what you're doing. I had 2 nephews that were twins, and they were good looking, and they said, "Well, we could do this." I said, "No, get in a workshop." So they never got in a workshop, so they never did anything. It wasn't too much work, fortunately for me. I mean, when I first came, I did, what I did was found out that the AGVA union was taking people. So I went to the AGVA union and said I was a singer, and I joined AGVA, and I found out it was a sister union to Screen Actors Guild. So then I went right over and I joined Screen Actors Guild. So now I have this, I'm armed with something, but I'm already doing workshops, you know. And I'm already feeling like I'm getting good reviews in the paper from what we're doing, so that was nice. I think timing is innate. When I tell people all the time, you know you already have it, but most people don't recognize it. For example, you go in your house and you call your wife. When you open the door, you say, "Hon," she doesn't answer. So you take a few more steps in and you say, "Hon," she doesn't answer. Then you start doing something and suddenly she comes out. Well, you have in your head a time that you expect her to answer. That's timing. And you call her based on timing. You say, "Hon," 1, 2, 3. "Hon," but she was in the bathroom and she didn't hear you. But you're not aware of that, so you assume she's not home. So, and then you're on the freeway. Because we're all connected, in your head, you can tell if the person in front of you is going to turn right or going to turn left. Now, he's planning to turn left, but then he aborts it. So if you're not paying attention, you think he's going left, and he's not. And that's why people end up with accidents, because they're picking up the signal from the person, but that person has changed their mind. And that's why they're running, because they're thinking about going through, and then at the last minute they say no. And you run into them because you're expecting them to go through. Yeah, Lucille Ball, naturally. She's right on it. And Ethel too. But also thinking of African Americans, I'm trying to think who. There was the girl that played in Landlord. She's a Gemini like me. She's not with us anymore. But she was a very popular actress. People who respond, I expect a response, and what happens, the audience expects it too. If I give you a line and you don't give it right back to me, or in time, they've moved on, and you won't get a laugh because your time has passed. So that's sort of paying attention to different actors and what they do, and the audience in particular, why they didn't laugh at what a great joke was, because the person stopped and thought, and they lost them. You know, there's a whole thing to it, not just me having great timing. I tell everybody, you've got great timing too. But you cannot stop and think. You have to respond, because people in real life respond. You say something to me that I don't like, I may respond. What? Not what? You know?